it's, in my experience, impossible to, or it's important to consider the larger context of what it means to become sexually authentic and resolve and go through all the hurdles that are going to be in front of anyone, regardless of what sexual orientation they have, in the journey to sexual authenticity. So I feel it's important to first lay that foundation, and then it'll be much more relevant to issues and such that your clients might face, and also to give them some foundation of how to approach and integrate their authentic sexuality into their everyday life. So, but before that, I want to really bless all of you for showing up. This is new territory. It's outside the box, outside the mainstream. Might not get a lot of support and encouragement for those entrenched in clinical and academic theoretical sexual models as they are currently and as they have been, which is why we're at this place now where I think we have to redefine sex therapy for the 21st century. There's so much sexuality emerging that is not in the academic models or the clinical models to be able to deal with, in my judgment. And so to step into this takes courage too, because you're going to be having probably pushback from people in certain sectors across the board who will not be able to even yet accept that kink isn't some sort of deviance or pathological disorder. So thank you and bless you for that. And I hope you continue on that path and encourage others to as well. The reason this is important is because there is this unprecedented explosion of sexuality emerging in the global consciousness and culture over the last, well, probably 50 years at least. And it's reached this stage now where it's pouring out of every seam, and it's not going to be held back. The sexual cat is out of the bag as I look at it. So there's this tremendous rush into this, all levels and nuances of one's sexuality, allowed by the internet and the anonymity that is there, the privacy that someone can, in many cases, most cases, secretly pursue what they are curious about and what might be true for them or what might awaken them through that exploration. So, and what's emerging as I look at it now is really just the desire for people to feel that their sexuality is normal. And normal is personal. In this era we're emerging into, it's not a moral code or a religious code or a family code or a civil code that defines what normal is. Each person gets to define what normal is, how I look at it. So I think this is the goal here, is to support people to feel normalized in their sexuality. This has led to the problem now, because this is such a new dimension of the human persona consciously coming to the fore, that it's still in a very immature, reckless, adolescent state. There's not a lot of integrity around how people are operating their sexuality. There's so much exuberance and excitement, and oh wow, people want to go for it, but they don't really have the tools yet to understand what that really means. And that's what's emerging, and that's what I think kink positive psychology is in support of, is to help people understand those tools that they need, because this is complex territory that requires mature adult behavior. So I think the biggest thing that's holding people back from embracing and exploring their sexuality, those who are still behind the threshold of what their desire is, those are the people who are going to be coming to you and say, well, I have to confess, all my life I've wanted to be spanked. This is what clients struggle with, is this fear of what others will judge about them, the tangible fears of what might happen if they are discovered i.e. loss of family, jobs, community, all kinds of things can happen. It could be in this sex negative culture we are in. So that fear, though, the important thing that I want to point out here is, for those of you who are not depth psychology oriented or Jungian and such, that considers the unconscious, I think it's going to be important to reintroduce this to psychology of the idea of the unconscious, the relevance and importance, significance of the unconscious, because this is the place where that has the power, really, because that's emotional energy, fear, shame, judgment, sorrow, grief. And there's parts of people that I've experienced, that have within them, literally, when it comes to their sexual expression, some parts saying, no, you're going to go to hell, you'll be ruined, no one will want you, kind of messages that have been embedded since childhood. And if not even more effective, people who have been literally traumatized or shamed, if not harmed, around their sexuality. So these are very powerful parts. And at some point, that person, maybe even on their own, you can point out to them, if they've come to see you and are looking for help with that, well, they have a part in them that's saying yes. And that's a distinct part from the part that's saying no. But that part is how I help encourage people to champion. Let that part be your champion. Yeah, say, give it a fucking big yes. I have every right to my sexuality. And yeah, I've got work to do. These parts of me are still going to linger, but you can move forward in expressing your sexuality. And it's also the opportunity to work on what has held it back, often for decades. So this is because of these new things that are coming out. We have these outdated sexual theories going on that in our academic and clinical institutions, that aren't really addressing these things. And I think one of the important concepts to address there is sexual identity. What's emerging is a pantheon of new sexual identities that weren't formerly even considered, or they were considered pathological, i.e., like gay and lesbian. Sexuality was considered in the 50s and back, but I mean, it started to emerge, in a conscious effort by those people in that sexual identity to establish it as a legitimate, authentic sexual identity. And this is what has to happen, I believe, in these new theories that are going to emerge that will support one in embracing their sexuality and also legitimize it in the sense of civil, legal, matrimonial, employment, and other dimensions that one will encounter when they embrace their authentic sexuality. So in this idea of there being outdated theories, one of the prevalent ones now is the problem sex, porn addiction, hypersexuality. Those are the big sweeping narratives that you hear in the media about sexuality, mostly negative oriented and kind of reefer madness level kind of hysteria about what people are doing sexually. And pointing the finger at that and moralizing and shaming often people about their sexuality. And for that very reason, people hide what's true about their sexuality. And so what is more prevalent to me is sexual dishonesty. That's as much of the problem, or actually a much greater part of the problem, is the sexual dishonesty that's occurring where people are afraid to reveal and be seen, in whatever their authentic sexuality is. And not that there isn't a lot of compulsive actions or behaviors that can be going on, but that's the problem. One of the big problems is addressing sexual dishonesty. So people are leading secret sex lives. That is a big problem. that leads to many complications. So this has led me to create what I call sexual authenticity disorder. Now, the DSM doesn't list sex or porn addiction, thankfully, as a psychological disorder, even though those concepts are quite prevalent and used by many psychologists in their practices and such. But so I felt that gave me some liberty to create my own disorder or my own view on that. So sexual authenticity disorder is what I see in my clients and in the culture at large, is people are extremely afraid, and it's a lifelong effort to conceal and hide their sexuality out of fear. Fear of what might happen, fear of being shamed, judged, punished. So that sends it into shadow and down below the surface. It doesn't go away. One's sexuality is a very potent, lifelong force, and it will continue to operate in some level or other, whether one suppresses it or hides it or not. But when you hide it and sneak, when you're out of integrity with your commitments and agreements and not being responsible for the things you've taken responsibility for, then this is where sex operating in the shadows leads to great turmoil and tumult, across the culture. All of the sports figures and politicians and religious people who busted in their sexual dishonesty are just the tip of the iceberg of the probably millions of times in every community across the land people are caught in their sexual dishonesty. And then there's this fall from grace, and it's a horrible thing, all because we as a culture don't encourage people just to be sexually honest and transparent to begin with. So in simple form, how I work with people in that regard is just to first help them claim what's true for them. What is your sexuality? What if you were free to just be who you are? What would be going on? How often? What would you be doing? I want to start there with them and let them claim that part of themselves, because most people, we've never been encouraged to claim our sexuality and champion it and be excited about it. So I start on that side of the coin, and then help them untangle all of the psychological, emotional, and physical resistance to the desire from these unconscious subpersonas that are powerful in their emotional drives of fear and harsh moral judgment, shame, confusion, etc. So I'm going to jump back in here. I think I should look to see if all's going well. So how are we doing so far? Is this all working? Before I continue on. Excellent, great. Okay, so it's kind of like, I better look over my shoulder to see if anybody's still here. So thank you for your help with that. So we're going to go back to the slideshow here. So this is besides being able to help and support the client, the best foundation as a therapist you can have is to have taken your own journey into your sexual identity. You're claiming your sexual identity and resolving it's kind of a lifelong process. There's no cure for what we've experienced growing up, really, other than developing practices to support and encourage the truth of your desire, and other practices to keep diminishing the effects of the parts that resist. That's my methodology anyway. So in that regard, this is something, unfortunately, that's totally lacking in academic and clinical models of the practitioner taking their own journey. This is where you can, because the danger is, that people, and often, especially this crowd, thankfully not, because you're already crossed that threshold, but many therapists are still going to judge a client who's coming with them with some sort of BDSM oriented sexual fantasy or desire. And unfortunately, that judgment, that projection onto them is really reflecting back on the therapist, but they don't know that. They haven't taken that depth journey for themselves to recognize their own ways they've been wounded or shadows or have judgments, so you have to do all you can to take that projection off of your client, even if you personally don't agree or you have to honor your own boundaries for yourself, but respect someone else's might be different, and there might be some extreme edges where you're crossing into some legal territory of the mandatory reporting areas and things like that. But for the most part, that's not going to be the case with what people desire. They just want to live their life and be normal, feel normal, welcomed, in that way. So whatever that looks like for you, I encourage you to start examining your own inner realm of sexuality. So this is what I've developed over the years I've been practicing, kind of a template, a model for a client to follow, and with your support along the way, to check out these 5 areas of integrating. These are the 5 keys to integrate your sexuality into your everyday life, as I view it. So the first one, sexual authenticity, that's mainly, like I said, the helping them understand you have a birthright. The client has a birthright to whatever their sexuality is. Nobody else has a right to determine that for them. But they often, for clients I see, it's really held down. They have a difficult time speaking that, oh, I want to be spanked, I want to be tied up. It's like, there is like literally a part of them choking them, saying, don't say that, So, and this relates to some other things we'll get to about how the body is involved in these things. But so sexual authenticity is helping them, if they don't already have a clear picture, help them drill down into what I think of as an inner mythos really is, especially if someone's in a kink-oriented sexual identity. And what I call a personal erotic myth, which we'll get to. So the second one is sexual honesty. Once they understand and know and have claimed, and okay, I'm gonna let this part of myself be alive in me and learn to express it. Okay, so how can you do that in an honest way? So this is why the territory gets tougher here, because it can be very challenging and difficult, especially if one is already in an existing relationship that didn't negotiate these things 20 years ago, but they don't go away. So now they're coming up. One partner recognizing, well, I have this, I need this, I am this. The same thing as if a gay man married a straight woman in the 50s to kind of, there was not a lot of other options to go, but then finally said, wait a minute, I can't do this. I believe kink's sexual identity and any valid sexual identity will be the same. So we have to start learning how to, in a healthy way, in a mature way, and in a way that protects your safety, your boundaries. It isn't you need to tell everybody in the world now, but at least first get honest with yourself, is certainly the first place, and then help them find out ways. Well, what do you want to do now with that, with your partner or with future partners? How are you going to introduce this part of yourself? So the sexual empowerment is the part I talked about in the body. So this is about learning tools of being present and embodied, movement practices, being into your breath, noticing where there's restrictions, like I said about the throat, and there's different techniques and tools that can be used, psychological body work and different embodiment things. I'm getting a little Zoom message here. Guess I had unlimited minutes. What happened here? Oh, all right. Some little things going on there. Sorry. Yeah, so this is all about helping them become embodied in their sexuality and where recognize and work on the parts where they aren't embodied. You know, most of our cultures live from the neck up. People don't even recognize they have a body, you know, to a great extent. So this part is to really and it's important to embody these archetypal, mythic, symbolic elements within us. You know, that's where the depth and the richness of it is. And if we're locked down, we can't really access that as deeply. So the sexual shadow is, uh, you know, if you've been hiding for 20 or 30 years and are now just, okay, I'm going to try and start doing that, you have a lot, the client will have a lot of embedded ways that they have been sneaking about their sexual desire or, you know, not being honest about it. And so this is just a way for them to, okay, let me check out. I used to do this all the time, you know, be it around porn or strip clubs or sex work or clientele or whatever way that, I mean, not that any of those are particularly wrong. They aren't wrong, but it's about the sneaking or the hiding. So there could be ways that, you know, people can easily, it's easier to fall back into their old behaviors rather than stick to their, you know, new mission. So we want to help the client get aware of, help them examine, okay, how's my sexual shadow been operating? And okay, I see how it does. And then help them find alternative choices and pathways if their intention, and this is the other thing about this whole thing, is about intention. You know, start them with, do you have the, you know, if they can claim, yeah, I have the intention to operate in the fullness of my sexuality in an honest way that's in integrity with my agreements and values, et cetera, et cetera. Great. That's when they start from there with that intention, then anytime they waver or get off of their path, which they will, no, we're not perfect, we're not seeking perfection, but that intention to be who they are in an honest way is an anchor. They can, oh, yeah, that's my intention. That's what I'm really for, and I'm going to come back to that. And okay, I made a mistake, or I misstepped, or fell back. I'm back on my path now. So it's an anchor where they know right back to go to if they get off the path. This one is particularly, paradox is relevant for people who are kink oriented. I think it fits most accurately there, and it's important. And then in that regard, because we live in a monotheistic culture, most of us in the Western world anyway, where things are termed right or wrong, black or white, good or evil. And so our sexuality is often almost exclusively portrayed in the dark, you know, in the not welcome, you know, the evil, sin, the flesh. And so this is a big threshold for many people of coming to terms with, wow, I am a filthy, nasty slut of some sort or another, which that's not, that's from any side of the coin. And I'm also a good parent and a good partner, and I'm in service in the world, and I attempt to be in my heart, and you know, all those things. Many people can't understand how it's been put. That's one is good and one is bad, you know, for most of us. So to bring it up to where, oh, it's more like yin yang, you know, that is normal. That is how we are. You know, we are these dualities. These, you know, one side involves the other. You know, so the getting to that is then, well, okay, good. You can accept that. Now, how do I really operate that? So the practice is to learn, how can I operate my yang side with my yin in a way that's, you know, in balance on the whole. So I'm going to come here. This is before we go into the DSP, DSM psychology and all. This is, we're almost there, but I wanted to cover this foundational material first. And this is primarily what I see as some of the key client concerns, not all of them, but just some that I believe are that I experienced. So, and we've kind of gone through those, and this is helping them with their shadowy or compulsive behaviors and sexual dishonesty, embrace their desire and claim their birthright, and then untangle the resistance, the shame, fear, and judgment, confusion about the paradox. Those were the things we just covered, but this leads to what shows up in clients is, well, they found out suddenly, or not suddenly, they finally want to address the fact that they're in an erotic mismatch in their relationship of decades, maybe, that again, it is, if I'm starting with a client who's single and wants to move on, then I try to get them to go right from the beginning into bringing their sexuality right on the first date, the first transaction. Okay, so I'm this, and I'm kinky. So it will save everybody a lot of time and trouble, because when you're in an erotic mismatch 20 years in, that's some really tough territory to maneuver to come to terms with, your sexual authenticity. And then all of the helping them get present, be mindful, be conscious, and understand what negotiation is and consent, and all of those more positive or advocating things that you can advocate for them. So this is kind of the mission here, as I think it is, to help people, be in their sexual dignity. And that means pushing back against all of the kink negative levels of our culture, from the therapeutic level, the academic level, social, political, legal. So that, and the mistake that is, these poor souls have been damaged some way. Even Jack Morin, who's the closest I've found with his CEMs, I think they were called. I forget what that stands for now, but he did not ascribe that there was an innate, inherent kink sexuality. He said, well, these have evolved because someone's been damaged or traumatized or had a lack or wounded in some way. And that explains why these fantasies come up as some sort of compensation. I don't find that true at all in my experience. And I find it much more accurate that these are innate, inherent desires within the person. So, as I said, I think the kink community is about a couple decades behind the gay and lesbian community in terms of really establishing a full-fledged community effort here. So that's, I think, an important thing to help with your journeys, or your participation in kink-positive therapy, is to really do what you can to help take the stigma off of kink. So now we're into the kink part of the kink psychological dimensions. And I'm going to take a pause here and kind of just come back. Core erotic theme. Thank you. And we can continue on. Is this going okay? So I would say, I think I extended the meeting where we don't have to worry about it ending at 40 minutes, which is what it originally was allowed. So I hope to have like maybe 10 or 15 more minutes of this discussion, and then we'll open it up for some interaction here. So I will go back to the slideshow here. So this is what I define as a fetish sexual identity. Yeah, so it's linked to what drives someone to orgasm. I think all sexuality is linked to that ultimately. Um, and that there are these evident personifications occurring at least in that last minute before orgasm. And within that, or people who are already engaged and have explored and examined their sexuality and are practicing it. Here, this is for the DSP DSM community. I have found it very similar or common that there are these archetypal, symbolic, mythic level engagements going on between distinct personas that are engaging in these, the broad overview of dominant and submissive there. So there's some level of power exchange inherent in kink-oriented sexuality or fetish sexuality. And I think there can be a broader spectrum that I'm speaking of here, but my focus is on in relationship, between two or more people engaging in a power exchange, a negotiated consensual power exchange relationship, either in a scene or in a lifelong relationship. But these inner desires are what I call a personal erotic myth. And this is what includes the distinct elements of their mythos, that includes, who that persona is, what they identify as the dominant or the queen or the asshole, the motherfucker. I mean, it has two dimensions, and I'll get into that. There's a noble and a sacred and profane side. DS is the sacred, BDSM is the profane, but they really operate together. And so this is, if you go on a site like FetLife, you'll see just a pantheon of examples of these pairings, these erotic pairings, and this mythic structures emerging. People are finding themselves. It's amazing that, wow, no matter how obscure your side of the coin might be, if you get on a site like FetLife or somewhere, wow, there's others in this tribe too somehow. That's fascinating in itself. And this is important in claiming and understanding that, so when you're, wow, I want to go out now and find a partner. Who are you looking for? What's the counterpart to besides all the everyday world things that you want to consider? This is important to consider also. What is this inner mythos, and who is my counterpart to that? So this is, as opposed to the core erotic themes, I call them personal erotic myths, because they are personal, meaning that they are inherent and that they didn't come from trauma or developmental issues growing up. These are lifelong, innate, inherent parts of any human being who has a kink-oriented sexuality. But their particulars, show up in the storylines and the archetypal personas, actions, props, settings, dialogue that are driving them to orgasm, and more importantly, or just as, I'll say more importantly, other deep erotic states. Because orgasm it's a great catharsis, but it's not really taking the journey into your erotic mythos. The point isn't orgasm, or it isn't. It might be orgasm several hours down the path, maybe not a quick explosion. So I have this survey called the Discover Your Personal Erotic Myth Survey that close to 3,000 people have taken so far. And I'm just going to give a couple of examples from this, because it highlights some of the misunderstandings and the fallacies, and also the issues that people are really going through. At least these 3,000 or so people are really going through. It's not a random survey. It's an opt-in that probably has definitely drawn from a more kink positive or sex positive interest. You know, so people had kind of gotten aware of it because they were already thinking or moving in that direction. So that's kind of the population here. But this is the thing about difference between eros and procreative sex, or thinking that sexuality is only linked to the puberty activation moment. For myself, this was true. My sexuality was very alive by the time I was 5 years old, and I was deeply, I mean, it was a big constant part of my being, even though my 5-year-old didn't know much about that, but this part was distinctly alive, kind of on its own. Sometimes I call it the sex creature, and so, but this was fascinating to understand, at least in this population. As you can see, 25% by the age of 6 were having distinct erotic fantasies, another 50% by 9, and 75% by 12. This is mostly prepubescent sexuality, so that's what I make a distinction between sexuality and eros. Eros is the mythic, symbolic part of sexuality. And that, as you can see, can come alive well before puberty. So that said, if it did come alive in those early ages, I asked, was there some point where you started to notice there was a conflict between, oh, this is my sexuality, this is great, and, oh, I'm not getting liked or admired, or I'm being chastised or shamed, or I got my ass beat because I was playing with myself, or whatever the case might have been. So I asked them what their effect of that, when they recognize that conflict, or how is it carried out over their life. And so you can see there, only 22% weren't affected. So that means, 77% of these pool of people had some pretty big impacts from encountering that conflict with their authentic sexuality or their early sexuality. And this is what kind of the depth of harm that's done by this and pervasive sexual dishonesty and sex negative culture that we're in. This is the one page from probably 100 pages of what people offered as their response to that conflict. So avoided relationships, became promiscuous, depression, unable to orgasm, repressed, passive aggressive, etc. Felt guilty. This is horrible, that this is going on within people's sexual unconscious, and how something that's such a vibrant and exuberant part of their life has become this burden, this weight, this traumatized, hidden creature. It's a terrible thing. So that's part of our mission, I believe, is to really help people release these deeply embedded pantheon of misery that's there. So I mentioned about these two dimensions, of DS and BDSM. Where they come from, nobody knows. It's a mystery, because we haven't ever really examined our sexuality clinically or scientifically. We don't really know that much about why there is a sex drive beyond procreation. But these are on one level, from my examination of these are instinctive. These are tapping into kind of ancient instinctive dimensions of our consciousness. From the most recent layer would be the mammalian alpha beta pecking order kind of psychologies that we have inherited from our mammal ancestors. That comes along with so it's alpha beta territorial tones of voice, gestures, bowing. So these are innate gestures, universal gestures that show up in many kink scenes, of how the dominant and submissive uh, interact with each other. That's the hot-blooded side. Then there's the cold-blooded reptilian mindset of predator-prey level interactions and psychologies and physical gestures that you see in many sadomasochistic scenes, where whether it's not a hot-blooded, passionate thing, it's just kind of coolly applying a little more pressure. How does that feel? Do you like that? There's that kind of uh, the psychology has been kind of moved up to a more refined sensibility in the modern world of sadomasochism, but there's very clear elements, I believe, linking it to the mammalian and reptilian behaviors inherent with us. Why they become eroticized? Well, maybe because this is a way that they can coexist in a civilized world, without just going back to the barbaric eras, but or the savage, primitive eras. Even though we still are very much, unfortunately, a savage world, unconsciously. But in sexuality and kink, these are energetics that can be danced with in a way, and our people are compelled and driven to them. Some people like there's BDSM a little more mild and tender, and it can be that. I mean, it's all about building trust and connection and ultimately love with your partner. That wow, I can be that fierce or in madly crazed in my sexuality, but my partner goes, oh, that's beautiful, I love that. That there's nothing more profound that I've found in terms of intimacy, to be welcomed by my partner in these more instinctual, primitive, wild parts, the beast showing up. So that's one level of the where I believe the mythos arrives from, and also how the body language and the gestures are inherent in us. So this is the difference between friction sex, as I call it, and eros. Is this mythic sensibility. It is like this amazing rich treasure trove of vivid sensations and primal passions, intense emotions, epic tales. All through all of those dimensions, it's an incredible wilderness area to explore that has riches of all sorts. There's also risks, but those can be dealt with or managed. So friction sex is great. Getting off feels great. It's incredible. But there's people who just innately seek a deeper level of beyond friction sex. So I mentioned, so there's the yin yang of kink. I think of that as DS and BDSM are the yin yang of kink. The DS aspect is what I consider the noble aspect. This is where it becomes like almost like a spiritual path. Can be taken to that level if your intention, if your aspiration is to become the best dominant that you can be. That's equivalent to aspiring to be the king or the queen, the archetypally. This is the king or queen is the one that blesses, sets the vision, witnesses, can see something in someone and raise it up from them, help them own it and be inspired and be in service to the realm. The king inspires that kind of loyalty and the warrior loyalty to defend and honor the king, etc. So and that's a lot of then, and requires an incredible level of integrity and accountability and responsibility and leadership. So that can be a very powerful path for someone to step on. And it is a path. It's a journey. It's not a destination. You don't arrive at it. You just can develop practices and an intention to keep growing into that aspiration. So the other side of the coin, and so the submissive can aspire to these mythic archetypal dimensions of, the devotee, the one in service, the one that supplicates, that surrenders, that uh, bows down, with joy, with the gratitude of being able to serve. That's their heart's desire, is to serve, And so that can be a very powerful and fulfilling part of those who enter it into as a relationship, These can also apply in a one-off scene, if you just have a play partner and you're going to, just have a play date. Those parts still come into play and are very important to hold and establish, because that's what can hold then. I think of it as the outer container is the sacred, the DS side. That's the place where you negotiate, you connect. You want to be heart to heart with your partner, with a scene or a life partner, so you both feel safe. You feel trust. You feel intimate. You feel connected. That's why physical connection is important in that side too, just to really help each other. Feel, yeah, we're going in together here. Even if you're at master slave level, that I believe that part is still very important to establish. It's key to allow you then to step into the inner chamber of the BDSM. That's being held now by this nobleness in it. Above all, do no harm. Here, but you can also explore these very edgy, off the charts kind of interactions. It can be amazingly, physically intense, fierce, cathartic, mythically, just as deep as you can think of. Pain, cruelty, taboo, all sorts of basically shadowy set interactions, predator, prey, rapist, victim, all can be consensually engaged in ways that one can stop or halt or pause the action, so to speak, as necessary. But so those two fit together to allow the intensity on both sides to flourish. I find this model is helpful. So, for when clients are, well, how do I do this now? Like I said, I was a slave. So that mean this is where people have to help sort out where they're because a lot of people are just into the kink side, really, which they say, I want to be submissive. They don't realize, I just want to be submissive in a kink scene. I don't want to be submissive in my everyday life, to the range of, I'm both. I want in both realms. I want to embody those things, those aspects. So, I encourage you to take this survey and to share it with your clients and others. I think it's a tool, really, I think, to help people start to get a glimpse of what their personal erotic myth might be. Because this is going to be important, as I said, in their relationships and in their personal claiming of what their truth is. And it is also a research tool that those little slides I showed earlier are coming forth, to help start to map and get a better picture of what's going on in the psychology of kink individuals. So I think we made it through, and so I'm going to step back into the room here, so to speak, and see what is going on, and if we can address some questions, if people still have them, we'll do that. And also, if anyone is interested in working with me one-on-one, I'd be happy to engage with you that way. Okay, we're still here. I'm going to, how do I do this? I think there's some tool that is about raising a hand, I think, that I can turn it on, and then you could ask a question. If there are other people that have questions they would like to talk. So there's a question about, oh, I've got a hand up too, but I'm going to answer this one here that came in. Oh, that is Patrick too. Um, are there other archetypes than the king and the queen? Yeah, there's a pantheon of them, from, you know, furries and mother father figures, you know, just dominant, you know, master. These are all configurations, you know, of you know, there's no right or wrong way or one way. Like I said, if you go on FetLife or a site like that, you'll see there's thousands of different, I think, archetypal manifestations of that. So so then there was a question: have I incorporated any sort of nonviolent communication, that the official nonviolent communication techniques? I haven't personally. You know, I think a lot of this is with some practice and education. If you've explored your own depths and are taking ownership for your stuff, you know, you can learn how to uh, respectfully negotiate and talk with someone, especially around some of these tougher issues that you might be encountering with them. I think there's a lot of really great things about that nonviolent communication. Um, but I think two people can, you know, if their intention is to really journey together, they can start to learn how to hold space for each other to express what they're encountering, like, wow. And especially I think it's important, that's why I think depth psychology is useful in this, is because it helps people separate out parts of themselves versus I am afraid of this, or don't like that, because there could be a part of them that, oh, I love that, and I want to pursue that. So it helps someone say, put it in terms, and help in their own examination and their awareness see that, oh, actually there's a part of me that feels that way, and that's got a lot of power, because it makes me feel, you know, they can feel that part, something's disturbed there, but damn it, I want to I don't, that's not what I want to, that's my old stuff, I'm moving forward. So it helps them distinguish uh, and start to separate out, and then be in choice awareness. Oh no, I don't, I want to support this part and diminish that part. They can start to learn their own internal things and better communicate about what's true. I hope that addressed your questions. Do I have thoughts about channeling or merging other DSM diagnostics? So, yeah, this is a good question. I think about, you know, in terms of, say, clinical psychological models and practices and techniques, cognitive behavioral therapies and such, and DSM diagnostics and recognition of disorders as such. Uh, how do I don't use those models, and when I work with someone, if they've been, I mean, I've had many people come to me that they've been diagnosed as clinically depressed, and, you know, say they have the one disorder or another, but I've found when it comes down to it, it's really addressing them in the terms of, so what is it that you want? What did you want from our session today? And okay, and what's in the way of you getting that? And there are the people that I've worked with mostly have responded to their own self, regulation and recognizing of things that I got to keep hitting the computer. They want to work with. I think, I don't say that those any of those techniques aren't helpful. If someone finds them helpful to follow along with a DSM-oriented clinical model, they should do so. But if it hasn't, a lot of times people who come to me because they've been to more traditional therapists and they still are yearning for something. So this is, I think, more about yearning, helping them get in touch with their yearning and get in touch with the ways they've been wounded or savaged in some way that's led to them operating in this realm. So there might be some spectrum where, yes, people have a biochemical imbalance that can only be adjusted by pharmaceuticals or cognitive behavior therapy. But most of the people I've dealt with are in a range where what's really going on is they're not happy. They're not, because their life force has been kind of shut off or cut down in some way, or they have high anxiety and they don't know how to, drop down and into some calmer level. I mean, I've worked with people who have had severe, trauma around their sexuality, and their body is so repelled by, being touched or come close to by, in this case, a man, that there are, so in some cases, this kind of thing there's sexological body work and such to help people in trauma like that. But for things like OCD or other things, I don't use those tools, but I don't, I think whatever works is what's important. Yeah, so someone's asking about kind of where on this edge of where someone is entering into territory that might be like, okay, I raped someone and now I feel bad about it. If they've come to you with, they've committed a crime, in that sense, they have to be encouraged to take responsibility for that, even though it's as tragic as the circumstances for all might have been, or the result of that. But again, there is some spectrum where there's pathology going on in people, but for the most part, that's really not going to be what clients are coming to you with, but I think every therapist needs to make that call. It's just like a judge, in a court, there's so many circumstances and so many things and so many layers to things. I can't say, oh, here's how you deal with that. But this is, I wanted to say something else about that. Yeah, so in terms of on another level of that ethics, there is a lot of need in clients to be touched, and it's not legal, quote unquote, to do so in most cases, unless you're a licensed massage therapist. It's interesting, massage therapists can touch people, but psychologists and others can't. But often the need is there. Like I described, that I've worked with people of, hands-on, like holding them through some sort of, to get past that fear of being held. I had a client who couldn't be touched by a man because she didn't understand how it could be anything but sexual, but she wanted to be touched by a man. And so technique I used was with her permission, and gradually and over a pace, like to let her process, because this is what it is like trauma is wants to process. It's gotten stuck in a way. And so the body's still holding it, even though the mind is saying, well, I don't really identify with that anymore. It's still so deep in the body. This is, an ethical question, I think, for the future is that some methodology needs to be broadened or allowed to really support clients in the ways that is going to be helpful to them versus what is legal. But I think that's up to each therapist to decide how they handle questions like that. So I'm going to, if I can figure this out, I see Patrick wants to do a question. Oh, I can go up here. I think I have such bad eyesight now I can't even see. Oh.
Hey, Galen.
Oh, now I got you. Yes.
Can I go ahead and ask my question?
Yes, please.
Hey, I'm curious about when you're dealing with male clients and you have a male client, either for his own sake or for a sake of a primary relationship, is being asked or he's desiring to step more into like a dominant, or primal masculine archetype. And he comes up against like social programming around the quote, toxic masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of qualities in, that sort of, dominant masculine that really kind of also fall into the realm of what social, social science, has termed to be toxic. How do you coach, such a man? Like, you've done an assessment. He seems like a good man. He's got ethics and he's got, morality, and he, does not have a desire to do actual harm, but he could be more dominant, and how do you work with such a man? And conversely, what do you do with a man who may not have great ethics and morality, and he's actually is, falls into that category of, it could be kind of harmful and toxic? And how do you work with that kind of man? Or have you, or is there a real discernment between the two?
No, there's a discernment, and I'm going to mute you there again. And thanks for that question. So in the first regard, it relates to what I call about these inner and outer chamber of, DS and BDSM. You have to start from the intention is I encourage the intention, that, yeah, you aspire to the nobility. The nobility is always, the sacred's always somehow a little bit, at least a little bit deeper than the profane side. I think some people have the fear, like, well, if I step into that, my predator, well, what if I wake up and there's blood all over the floor? What did I do? Kind of, nightmare kind of thing. But that's kind of like a reefer madness kind of hysteria that I don't find true in the greatest spectrum of the client population. So in that regard, of someone who's kind of stuck in that side of the paradox of, the good, nice guy and bad boy paradox, you might say, of great, you're anchored in this nobility already. You have no real desire to harm your partner or anyone else, and that you what you're missing, though, is you've disconnected from this primal instinctual level, and if this is an authentic inherent part of you to be a dominant erotic sadist, say, but you're like, nice guy is too strong because mom told you, nice boys don't hit girls, and all of these kinds of messages that have really kind of shut off acceptance of authentic, this authentic, fierce, primal part of themselves, then I help them understand the paradox, that, oh, you're, especially if the partner, I've had women clients come to me and say, my partner won't step up. I need him to grab me and throw me against the wall or something. I'm, needing that primal thing. And he's like, well, I can't, I don't do that to women, well, okay, that part of you doesn't, but is there a part of you that, can you think of a time where you would have liked to just, grab her by, and take her down in some way? And maybe if that kind of sparks a little, well, actually, yeah, sometimes, or whatever, then, okay, help them get in better touch with that and understand that, this is entering into then in a negotiated, consensual, safe words, all of the protocols that one wants to have in entering that kind of a scene. But then there's things about embodiment, like, okay, throw a flogger. Let me see, do you have, are you kind of stuck? Is your arm kind of frozen there? So you help them get into their body more and breathe, and help them understand how they can create a ritual container to step into for certain aspects of, start slow. If you're going to engage your partner and this is new, always start slow and keep it simple in the beginning, just to start the journey. That's the key, is you got to start the journey and make it safe enough or simple enough or easy enough so that you're not taking a big stretch where you're way in over your head. Just try something simple for a little bit with agreed upon with your partner and see how that goes, and then debrief it afterwards and such things as that. On the other side, if someone is coming to me and say, I don't give a shit about anybody, I just want to fucking, beat somebody up and fuck them, well, I would just have to say, I don't think I can really help you. And if your intention isn't to be in integrity and be accountable and be responsible and be negotiable and consensual, I'm not someone who can help you. I don't know what, I don't know why they would come to me with that. I would think they came to me because they feel that part is, they don't know how to understand how to control that primal urge, in a way to be honest and in integrity. So if their intention is like, wow, no, I don't want to be that way, good, then we can start working on establishing how to put you back in integrity. I'm just looking at the questions here. So yeah, this is a situation kind of like in a relationship where there's a part of one of the partner's sexuality is coming alive, or finally suddenly it can't be held back any longer. And how do they bring that in, and if they've completely repressed it and it's coming alive, something is, Eros is amazingly potent and strong. It doesn't go away even after decades. It'll suddenly just look for an opening and out it comes, So again, this is back to someone completely repressed it. Okay, well, let's start at understanding what's your sexual truth. What is it that you really desire? What is, maybe they've repressed it, but in their life, but maybe not in their fantasies. Maybe they masturbate to it regularly, or some people do just will come to me and say, I'll say, what's your desire look like? And like, I don't know, I just want to be taken. That's the extent of the depth that they've allowed themselves to look at and examine it. So I would help someone first examine what's true, then talk about their circumstances. So if someone's in an erotic mismatch with, and now they have kids as well, right, there's high stakes here. This is no easy ground, but it's a spectrum of either, it's like, just if like if you're a gay man married to a woman for 20 years and you were finally ready to go out, that's how contrasting can be if you're a kink oriented individual with someone who's not into kink at all. But you love them, you have a great relationship, you have a family, your kids, business together, whatever, all these other dimensions. So, people just have to really sort through a lot of things to come to clarity about, but they have a right to claim it first. It's their birthright. They have every right to have their partner consider what an equitable way, somehow or other, to allow that sexuality to exist. Or they really might have to to part ways. You know, if their partner's just going to totally judge them and think you're disgusting and God, don't ever say that, you know, like that is not an equitable situation or a healthy one. So, but yeah, it's very complex, you know, and the kids there too. That's why I really encourage people to start at the beginning and get that all clear. It's complicated enough to be in a relationship and have a family and all that. Um, is there an article or book describing the archetypes? I think there's a number of people who have written some of these. Maybe they don't put it in the same terms of archetypes exactly, but you know, my own book covers some chunk of that, decoding your kink, and that's available through my website if you go there. And yeah, I just would kind of Google in on that and see who's you know, not it's not a big topic. You know, it's not a big a lot of people thinking that way, but I've been in the kink scene 20 years, and it's really at this stage where it's emerging in a much broader way, and there's a lot more. I think going to be more research and comprehension, and it's particularly in these depth psychology oriented sensibilities that do look at archetypes and the unconscious. And so I'm going to jump to this Mike's question here about how would I go about beginning to explore this in a way that might avoid triggering my partner. There's no way to avoid if your partner's going to get triggered. That's part of the journey. You know, she might already, assuming it's a she, be triggered, and you're already knowing like what you would be stepping into to bridge that gap that might be there, or that, you know. So everybody's got to do their own work. You know, if you're dealing with a partner who is triggered and they're not able to say, wow, a part of me is really upset by this, and I really love you, and this is, well, I want to help, I want to figure this out, uh, then it's going to be way more of a challenge. If they're just stuck in the side and says, that's disgusting, I don't want to do that, like, or when you do that, I think of it as, you know, it's so degrading or disgusting, how could you want to do that to me? That means, you know, they don't understand this idea of paradox and this idea of the sacred and the profane dimensions. You know, there are many partners who like, wow, yeah, I'd love you to do that to me, you know, tie me up and beat me with a flogger and, you know, shove a butt plug up my ass while I suck you off, you know, while you're calling me dirty names. You know, that's a hidden world. I mean, I've had couples who were totally hidden from each other. One finally was, you know, busted for the stuff because he was out running around doing all kinds of stuff. And the wife said, he said, well, what is it that you really want? What is? And he told her, I'm into kink and DSB. And she says, wow, me too. I'd love that, you know. So that was an amazing discovery by two. But when you can be in places because we're stigmatized, you know, kink is still so stigmatized. People don't understand that, oh, you can still be a loving, tender, decent, caring partner and husband or boyfriend, whatever the case might be. And also, you know, in a inner chamber for a period of time, you know, that's agreed upon, we will enter it and the rules are this way. You know, so yeah, if there's hope, you know, I think there's a lot of articles and again, my book and things like this that can help people understand this complex psychology of kink, you know, and that it carries both of these sides, you know, tender and sweet and also brutal and cruel. dimensions that you need to learn how to integrate and dance together in a negotiated way with a partner to be able to do successfully. That can be, wow, an incredibly rich experience. So I hope that gave a little insight. So then it was, do I actually physical practices? Yeah, so like with, so first practice is just to learn, help people get embodied and help them get into their breath, you know, into movement so that they recognize they have a whole body, you know, head to toe. That's where you want to be. In my experience, is you want to be head to toe in your body. And that's where you can embody. This is what I think of as going on in these archetypal personas. They are complete and intact personas. And I think the idea is to get out of the way, get out of my head, so I can just let this persona, this dimension of me, embody. And it knows all the things to say, move. It's a totally creative dimension. It doesn't need to be scripted, or that's why I don't think of it as role playing. I think of it as archetypal embodiment in those regards. So, but partly to help people because they're so stuck. I mean, like, yeah, learning, you know, helping them learn to slow down the stroke, say, you know, so they can really kind of like, oh, I see, brain, why, you know, get more connected to this smoother motion. Yeah, things like that can be helpful. So yeah, you're the in answer to the where your wife is, seems like a conscious part of her says, yeah, I want to dive into this. Something about it turns her on, and it's a good thing. But yet you'll hit edges where some past trauma is coming up. So yeah, that's, I always look at those as opportunities, really, you know, because this is something unresolved in her. That's something that wants to be looked at, something, a distinct part of her that's not part of her sexual yearning that gets turned on and seems like is engaged and wants to engage. So, you know, the first step is just to understand that more clearly so you can put a boundary around that area. You know, this is what to start with. Yeah, you definitely don't blow past it at this point. Set a boundary around it so that that part is kind of quarantined while all the rest of the territory can be explored. And this is a separate part to take back into another level of you know, a therapeutic mode to start to unpack what is going on there, what's that related to, how, where did that show up, who is it that's showing up, because this is like a protector in some way. Some part of her is protecting a part of her that, oh, I don't want to have that go on again level. So, but it's unconscious, so it's indiscriminate. You know, it's you as her partner probably are not the one who's triggering her, but you look like, sound like, smell like, say something, a snippet of words, boom, she's triggered into this story that is very contrary to the conscious intention to explore. So that's a short version. Um, yeah, I I think yeah. My intention is to be anonymous. Maybe I'm not sure if I'm doing something in this environment. I'm not clear about, but I hear you. So still got some people here. Any other So if you want to speak your question, if you have one, I can. I think I can manage to get your audio on. When I believe Patrick spoke, did everyone hear the audio also? Thank you. So, Patrick, are you wanting to speak, Patrick? Do you have a question? Did I turn it on? It says on mute. So that means it's not muted. Okay. This has been recording, so I hope to be able to this worked to capture all of this and can be available afterwards. And oh, thank you. And I think we'll call this close. Please contact me if you have any follow-up thoughts or questions. And I'd love to hear feedback on this. And I kind of have this intention to think that this could be an ongoing, a monthly thing or something to come in, and the next ones be more interactive and such. But if you would do that, I'd appreciate hearing from you in those regards. And so, yeah, I'm going to close her down now, and you can contact me directly if you have any questions. Bless you all for coming, and carry on. I appreciate so much that you're interested in this realm, and I hope we can keep shaping the world in a better direction towards allowing people to be who they are sexually. Adios.